Good afternoon, everybody. It is 12:30. It's Wednesday afternoon. It's time for Lancat home games. And it is, I don't know what it's like in Fife, Eddie, but it is pissing with rain here in East Lothian, just about 10 miles outside of Edinburgh. Thank you very much for the tons and tons of you who are joining us live and are continue to join us live every Wednesday afternoon. I know loads of you will have got the email and will have seen on social media that we are doing something slightly different today on home games, because this is episode number, God, I don't know, 33 or 34 of home games, can't remember. But we have focused exclusively on people within our little financial services bubble. For obvious reasons. We are a financial services consultancy and we deal in platforms and pensions and investments and all that kind of stuff. But today, for the first time, we are stepping outside of financial services and speaking to a wonderful chap over in deepest, darkest, gloomiest Fife called Eddie Martin. And if I can just go live to Eddie and say hello, how's it going? How's your day been so far, Eddie?
It's been very good. I'm a wee bit confused though. I don't know what to do. All these restrictions and all these different things that are happening now. And I was watching the First Minister yesterday, and I was a wee bit. I don't know. I had to phone my wife. I'm working from home just now, and I was like, "Am I allowed to go down the stairs?" I got to that point where I don't know. And then the next thing, I know this is about mental health, and you were talking to me there about what's it like in Gloomers Fife. I started getting stressed out. I don't even know if I'm allowed to go at the back. I'm allowed to go at the back and check and see if it is raining. I don't know. But looking out the window, it's very gloomy, very gloomy. But it's not going to be gloomy for the next 45 minutes now. So all good.
No, it's not going to be gloomy for the next 45 minutes because what Eddie and I are going to do is hopefully bring the subject of mental health to life a little bit. I am the first thing to say, actually, which is a really serious subject before we get on to administration and all the stuff that we normally talk about, is that I am not and would never claim to be a mental health professional. If indeed you're watching this, or if you know someone who is in a seriously bad way, the first thing to say is, of course, seek professional help if you feel like you need it. What we're going to do today, and Eddie is by some stretch more of an expert in this subject than I am, is try and bring the subject to life with a wee bit of real life experience and a lot of the work that Eddie's doing. But I'm sure Eddie would echo the fact that if you do know someone, or if indeed yourself is feeling in a desperate situation, then do please seek professional help. On the administration side of things, what I'm going to do is put the link up for audio and video buffering. Oh no, it's disappeared. Because I know sometimes there can be wee issues with sound and video mild buffering, and there is nothing worse in life than a dose of mild buffering, of course. I've just posted that link. So if you click on that link, it delays the feed and does all kinds of clever things and brings us back in sync. Claire on the live chat saying it was really nice of you to coordinate your specs for today. That's absolutely right. We could have done a better job with the shirts though, but there we go. So yeah, if you want to click that link, that'll sort out your audio and visual issues. If you want to watch any of the Lancat archives, then they are available on our YouTube channel. God, what a year it's been when the Lancat finally gets a YouTube channel. What a desperate state of affairs. But you can catch any of the previous 30 plus episodes of Home Games. Right. On to the matter at hand. I'm here today to talk about mental health, chiefly in the workplace, and I have been joined by my good friend Eddie Martin, who I met for the first time about 14 or 15 months ago. Is that right, Eddie? We met for the first time on the Lancat Big Walk back in September, October time last year.
Yes, that's correct. In my role as a Dunfermline Athletic Mental Health Ambassador, I thought it was only right after speaking to your mum and dad as well. People are probably not aware that your mum and dad play a significant role in the football club as well. And they told me about the charity walk that they're doing. I thought it was great. And if there was anything at all that the football club could do to try and promote it, or anything at all, was to come down. So I came down outside the Stellaricum's office. I got to meet a few of you. It was great to meet some of you. And I managed to get talked into doing the walk, but I managed to negotiate it round. I would walk as far as the football stadium. So we got a couple of photos outside there, and I've been keeping in contact ever since. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. the fundraising that you've been doing for the Samaritans. It's been great. It really has.
So let's because we're not here to talk about football. That is the connection between Eddie and I and how we got to meet. But let's kick off by talking about the work you do at Dunfermline Athletic. And what I'll do is let's give like a 60-second history of modern history of Dunfermline Athletic. So going back to kind of the turn of the millennium, Dunfermline Athletic got sucked into the kind of arms race of big contracts and media broadcasts, and there was a lot of kind of murky intercompany debt. There was Bank of Scotland stuff, and some of the directors and some of the stuff that Rangers got into difficulty with. We shared some of that common history a lot alongside a number of high-profile clubs in Dunfermline, and we came very, very. I mean, this went on for a number of years, and we came very, very, very close to proper extinction. And we were only really saved by the local business community over in Dunfermline agreeing to, I think it was a 0 pence in the pound administration deal that allowed us to continue as a football club. And since then, there's been a huge effort in running Dunfermline Athletic as a community club. And it's I mean, there's no shame in saying this, but we are propped up by volunteers and by well-meaning individuals who do various bits and bobs to help the club out. My mum has helped with her friends to run the Young Supporters Club for something like 25 years now. My dad's the doorman, among one or two other things. And of course yourself, Eddie, is now the mental health ambassador for Dunfermline Athletic. So it's a fundamentally different club, I think, in terms of outlook and ethos and atmosphere and all those kind of things to where it was 10 or 15 years ago. Do you want to tell the story of how you got involved in the mental health side of things in Dunfermline?
Yes, of course. Well, I've always been involved within mental health awareness within the workplace. And I did notice that there was not so much a need, but there was a gap there within the Dunfermline Athletic. I was involved in fundraising for Pars United, which is part of the organisation that eventually helped save the Pars. And through that, I went to Supporters Council meetings. I did a couple where I was secretary or chairman, or just a general dogs body, and through that we managed to get some good stuff done. There was a great engagement between the board of directors and the supporters as well. And in 2016, I did a talk at one of the Supporters Council meetings regarding mental health and sport. And through there, I've continued my journey with Dunfermline Athletic. So noticing that there was a gap there, and noticing that if there was something that we could do to improve or maybe give a payback to the local community and the fan base, would be to do mental health awareness sessions. So we did that. We ran it over a period of 3 sessions. They lasted over 2 hours. Happened at night. It was a drop-in centre. It was a walk-in. Didn't need an appointment or nothing like that. And the first 2 we concentrated on what is mental health. The second part of it, we touched on alcohol and drugs. The second session was about anxiety and depression. And the third session was about suicide and recovery. So after that, they were a great success. We got loads of interaction from the people who came along, from the local community. I was able to put on a mental health first aid course. I'm pleased to say that 8 volunteers from the local community came through and did the course. So we have those 8 volunteers now who are mental health first aiders within the local community. And I got invited to go through to Hampden to do something on football, to do the mental health first aid on football, which is a very similar course as an instructor, but there's different elements to it as it specialises in football. So I asked if I could do something with Dunfermline, because you could only get on the course if you were associated with a football club. So I had a meeting with the chairman and one of the directors, and Ross MacArthur, who was the chairman, and Drew Main, the director, were sitting in the boardroom, and I put across my pitch, if that's what we want to call it. And both Ross and Drew were like, if there's anything at all we can help you with, we definitely will. And then Ross said, how would you feel about becoming the Fairland Athletic Mental Health Ambassador? And in that role, I've got to promote the football club, I've got to promote mental health within the football club, but also work with the staff, work with the players, and work with the charities that are involved with Edinburgh Fairland Athletic as well. So that's where I am. I'm absolutely loving the journey that I'm doing it now. I've been in the post now for just over a year, and as you touched on it, Steve, it's a voluntary post. Everything I do is in my own time, which I don't mind, because to get associated with the Fairland Athletic, but also to go out there and knowing that I am making a difference in the local community, by helping others, is fantastic. For me, it's a perfect fit.
And do you think, I wasn't planning on asking this, Eddie, but it's just popped into my head, which is obviously always a dangerous thing to admit live on broadcast. But do you think, so you talked about drop-in sessions for the local community. Do you think that, because a lot of what I talk about and what I've talked about with other people in financial services, so like Ollie Smith at Citywire, who people who are viewing this just now will know, and Rohan Sivajoti and Paul Feeney and people like that. A lot of what we talk about is, without wanting to make this a gendered debate, there is a real fundamental issue with getting men, particularly young men, to talk about this and to acknowledge this and take responsibility and open up and all those kind of things. Do you think the fact that the stuff you're doing is tethered to a football club, by association, that is fundamentally helping? Because people are going, I'm going along and I'm going to meet a fellow football fan, and I've got that in common with them already. Do you think that fundamentally makes a difference to say you were doing it at the local community centre in Dunfermline, for example?
Yeah, definitely. The easiest way I can describe it is, when people are coming along to the football club and they're coming to the stadium to go into one of the suites to get the course delivered to them, or the workshop delivered to them, when they go through the doors at East End Park, they've been there before. They know what it is. So there's a sense of belonging. There's a sense of home there. And that's really important, because you need people to feel comfortable. They've already taken the big step. They've taken that step to either come in the car or go on the bus or walk to the stadium. They've took the massive step. But if they can feel that they are comfortable in a place and they've got that sense of home and belonging, it makes everything a lot easier, I think.
Do you think, because we're not going to talk about football for 45 minutes today, and I want to try and link this as much to financial services and what we can learn from that. Do you think there's a learning in there for the kind of stuff that we might aim to do within financial services, and take, whether it's training sessions or meetings, to take them away from the office to somewhere a bit more neutral or a bit more homely, or what do you think? So I'm just thinking back to my own experience, 7 or 8 years ago, when I was signed off work, and the whole process was very cold. To be frank, I mean the doctor side of things was absolutely fine and what have you, but in terms of the return to work process, I was working for a large company at the time. There's no secrets, people can find out on LinkedIn who that was. But the occupational health and occupational health therapy kind of process was all handled remotely. It was all telephone based. It was very impersonal. And then when I then did come back to work, the one-to-one meetings were held in the office, and with not in earshot of colleagues, but surrounded by colleagues in other rooms, and it just didn't feel right. Is there anything we can learn in financial services from that side of things, do you think?
Absolutely. There's always ways for learning. And you mentioned there about return to work and stuff like that. I know that occupational health will probably have some education on mental health, but they don't know, not all of the occupational health know everything that they need to know about mental health. That's just the way it is. And what you don't want when you're getting a return to work is that it's going to be a tick box exercise. You want to be listened to. You want to know what structures are going to be put in place for you. what help is going to be there for you, and how your manager or supervisor is going to be able to help you. Now, what I've noticed with other organisations, and I don't know if financial services are the same, but I'm just going to generalise managers and supervisors together, because I don't like the term managers or supervisors. I like the term, or I like to use them as influencers, because they've got to influence their team. They've got to get results. And imagine if you look at a football analogy compared to a financial services analogy, both will be results driven, and that's going to be really important. So getting back to the managers and supervisors, they have to have an understanding. They have to have education about mental health issues, mental health illness, and also mental health crisis. Because if they don't have that, they won't have any understanding about what, not you, Steve's needs are, but what the need of the individual is when he's returning back to work after, getting through the road of recovery, and he's ready and able to come back to work. And I think that is really, really important. And that starts at the top. That starts at the top of any organisation, because what happens is they've got to have an understanding, they've got to have a knowledge, and they've got to put something in place to make sure that it's a safe place for you to return back to work. And what you're saying there about going to somewhere remotely, yeah, that is great if it can happen. Unfortunately, where we are now, people are working from home, everything is getting done remotely, not everything, but the majority of things are getting done online and stuff like that as well. But I would love to see a return back to face-to-face, because you need that interaction with human beings. We like the interaction, we like the eye contact, we like the conversation. So I think that's really important, that we do get back to that. And I think that for any organisation, for any company, for any service, education is key. And you've not to be afraid, because you could easily be in a return to work situation, and if you are speaking, or anybody's speaking about a situation they have, and the person sitting opposite does not have a Scooby-Doo what is getting said, then how are they going to react, and how are they going to be able to support you? And then they could actually end up feeling uncomfortable during that interview because they don't understand. And then the worst thing that can happen is a tick box exercise. They say, right, okay, right, that's great. It's good to have you back, Eddie. Thanks for coming, and good luck with your anxiety. We've got to get away from that.
Yeah. So an important thing to say is that you are doing work. It's not just in the football sector, but it's in different sectors as well. And let's talk about the positive first. So what is it that so if you go in to meet a new organisation, what is it that defines like success? When do you get the sense that this company's up for it, and they're gonna do good work here, and they're gonna sort this out? Is that simply a case of the culture of management, or is it something about the way they're structured? What is an example of success that you've seen in changing the way a company behaves around this?
Well, there's 2 points to it. The first point is, I know it will be a success if the company I'm going to speak to don't want to talk about cost. They don't want to speak about how much it's going to cost, how much production are we going to lose if the individuals are going to come off and do a training session. Are the teams going to be working correctly if the manager or supervisor are away? So what I like to do is go in there and have the meeting and speak to them and see what the deficiencies are within the organisation, within the company. And if I can go in there right away and we speak about the deficiencies within the company, then I know that we're onto a good track. Talking about another positive, it took me about 6 or 7 years to change the culture in a male-dominated industrial environment. I'm going to name drop here. It's my former company. It's Alexander Dennis and Falkirk, and they're Britain's biggest bus builder. And what happened at the very beginning was I noticed that there wasn't very much a level of support there. Unfortunately, we lost some colleagues to suicide, and he died from suicide. So what I noticed was there was no support for the individual who had died by suicide, but also there was no support there for the people who were coming back to work after the weekend and noticed that they weren't there, and then they were told that they had passed away. And what I did was I managed to speak to the HR department, and we've got a bereavement counsellor come in and work specifically for the department and the squad of men that they're in. They're working. So from that, we did a mental health awareness sessions. We've got different charities, different organisations to come into the workplace, and the individuals were given, the teams were given 20 minutes to half an hour to go around and speak to the people and get advice, take leaflets, take raw materials away from them, and all that. That was great. We got some really good feedback from that. Interestingly, about 90%, if not more, of the shop floor were male. And we did an analysis of the raw materials, and two of the most popular ones that were taken away was Why Am I Sad? It's about being a teenager and growing up. And the second one was living with postnatal depression. So I thought that was quite significant. So after that, we went ahead, and the company encouraged me and put me through my training to be a mental health first aider, and then go on to be a mental health first aid instructor. And through that, we were able to do different things. We were able to promote mental health within the workplace. We were able to, we had our own CME days, whereas we had one was Pass the Badge and the other one was Time to Talk. And then through that drip feeding, we managed to change the culture, whereas before there was an age demographic there, where it was a case of the older generations were saying, just go on with it, pull up your socks and stuff like that. Whereas when the mental health awareness sessions were going on, the people that were saying that, at the end of it, were coming up to speak to me and saying, is there anyone else in the room? I says, no, it's all done. I says, there's another session tomorrow if you want to go. No, I want to go. Then there's no one there. So there's a couple of leaflets there I want to take away. So, there's that masculinity, there's that bravado, and they still want to be seen to be doing that, but deep down, they know that either they need to help themselves, or maybe they have some friends and family that could do with some assistance. What I did notice was that if you're looking to, in the canteen, you go there on a Monday morning and they'd have their papers out, they'd be speaking, and, it would be a case of, did you back that horse I told you to back? At 10 to 1 at 1, did you back it? No, I didn't back it. That goal was offside. I'm telling you, that goal was offside. There's no danger, that was a goal. We should have at least got a draw. That's the conversations that are going on, not the conversation of saying, I feel absolutely terrible. I've got this cloud hanging over the top of me. I can't shift it, and I just really, really feel really bad. What do you think I should do? Is there any way you can help me? Those conversations were non-existent. Slowly and gradually, we're able to help it. And then through the first aiders that were in the workplace, that gave them the confidence to go and speak to someone, and then that helped it. So it was all a case of drip feeding it. And now I'm pleased to say that the culture in a male-dominated industrial environment has been changed, and there is a definite culture shift in there, which is for the better and for the good.
That's brilliant, Eddie, and thanks for sharing that. Change subject slightly, because when we talk about mental health, particularly in the workforce, a lot of the focus is on what can an organisation do, what can a company do in order to provide a better framework or better support. But I'm interested in this notion, particularly because it's deeply personal to me. But I'm interested in the notion of personal responsibility and your views on that, because I'm someone who clearly is comfortable talking about the subject. I've done podcasts and blogs and spoken at various events and stuff like that. So I don't feel any form of shame or stigma in doing so. But I'm also just off the back of not taking my own advice for the past few weeks, and noticed and felt myself getting ever so slightly worse day by day or week by week, and whether that's a combination of lockdown and the year it's been, and pressure and just juggling everything at home. We've got a wee girl that's just turned 1, and all those various things. I mean, who knows? Is it the weather, change in the weather as well? Who knows what the various factors are? But along that way, And along that journey, I didn't take my own advice to start looking after myself a bit better and talk about it and all those kind of things. Now, clearly, if someone is really suffering from something extraordinarily serious and life-threatening, then they might need intervention and they need professional help and what have you. But in the cases of, whether it's slightly milder depression or anxiety, what's your view on the notion of personal responsibility and when someone should actively seek help? Do you have any tips for someone like me for, looking after yourself a wee bit better?
The only thing I will say is, one thing that is very important, and you touched on it, is self-care. And self-care is really important. Mental health, when there is all different types of mental health illness, and it's not generic. You can't just, one size does not fit all. That doesn't happen. The good thing is, and I'm saying it's a good thing, is that you've noticed that there could be triggers. And that there could be triggers there, or there's maybe a wee slope that you're starting to go down. I'm not saying in your personal circumstance, but through the personal responsibility. What I do think is, on the road to recovery, there is speed bumps along the way. It's not just a flat path. That's not going to happen, regardless of whatever it is. And it affects people in different ways. I think that if there is someone there that you can trust, someone there that you can speak to, it is great. But then there's also, if there's something you can do to maybe you've not been doing as much as maybe you should be doing, going outside, going for a walk, maybe your alcohol intake is getting a wee bit more than it used to be. Even caffeine can have an effect as well. So your sleep pattern, all these things, these things all can have an effect on it. As I say, it's not one size fits all, but I think it's very important for people to have the personal responsibility, which is their own self-care. And then obviously if things start getting a wee bit, not so much worse, but they're starting to go out of control a wee bit, then that's when interventions start. But what I will say is, the intervention doesn't have to come from a mental health first aider. The people that are close to you will notice it first. Your partner, your wife, someone like that. Could be your parents, could be your friends. But the most important thing is, if you are one of those people who is a friend, a partner, or your wife, is to speak and is to say, and have the confidence to say, listen, Eddie, I've noticed that you've not been yourself for the last couple of weeks. Is everything okay? Now, everybody would love to say that, because that's the message, that's the mantra just now, is it's okay not to be okay. But how many people actually do have the confidence to say that? It is okay. How are you doing? What's happening? And that's really important, to have that engagement, to have that interaction as well.
Yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to press pause on the flow of the discussion and open the floor for questions. And I've also got 4 or 5 questions that have been sent in anonymously in advance. I'm just going to focus on one because I think we've just touched on it with my own questioning when I was just asking you that there, Eddie. So when you struggle with your mental health, I find that you often take a few steps back or get stuck, and that can feel really frustrating and disheartening. Have you got any tips to counter those feelings in particular? And I know we just spoke a little bit about that, but do you have any tips on dealing with the frustration, or if you feel a little bit down on yourself because you're maybe going through one of those bumps in the road?
Yeah. Well, what I'll say, and I'll reiterate it again, is, talk to someone you trust. Try and keep active. That's really important. Try and keep active. The alcohol intake. Alcohol is a depressant anyway. It maybe makes you feel good for the first part of it, but then you'll feel rubbish after it, and then once the hangover kicks in, then that's when the depression can kick in as well. Caffeine is important. Also, talking about caffeine as well, reduce or stop, not immediately stop, but stop the energy drinks, because the amount of caffeine and sugar that in them is ridiculous. Also, do something that you're good at. Give yourself that sense of fulfillment. Do something that you know that you're good at. And going back to keeping active, I want to speak about the happy hormones, if that's okay, the four happy chemicals. So you've got serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, and dopamine. Okay, so if you're keeping active and you're doing these things, serotonin is a mood stabilizer. If you're feeling loneliness, or if you're feeling depression appears, that's what happens when serotonin is absent in your chemical makeup. And a good supplement for that is vitamin D. Vitamin D promotes serotonin in that. The other one is oxytocin. That's the love hormone. It's a reaction after a cuddle. You get that really really good loving feeling. Also, it improves your immune system as well. So if you can keep on trying to keep on top of these. The other one is endorphins. So if you can get your release of endorphins is a chemical, and that is a response and a release to pain and stress, but also gives you a sense of euphoria. I like to call it the chocolate the chocolate chemicals. That gives you that same feeling. But also, it's also known as a runner's high as well. So if you've done some vigorous exercise, you feel good during the exercise, and after you've done it, you've got that sense of euphoria. You've got that rush. The other one is dopamine. So dopamine, that's a motivation. That's what it does. It gives you a surge of pleasure when goals are achieved, and this is released during pleasurable situations. And it is exactly what you're thinking, by the way. They were. I guess it's a family show. It's a family show.
What I would recommend, and it does release one of those, certainly at least one of those, maybe more than one, depending on your, is watch the highlights of Scotland-Serbia from last Thursday night, of course, which we've not touched on so far, but it's incumbent on me as a Scotsman to mention that again for the Scots who are watching today. So listen, thanks very much for that, Eddie. Another question which I'll take from the live chat. So on the assumption that employees are afraid to mention anything to their team leader or might be afraid, do you recommend that a mental health first aider is not an influencer, so that they are outside of the management structure and team leader structure? And thank you for that, Paul, for that question.
It's a very good question. But what I would say, and I don't know what the financial services are like, but in some places there can be some snobbery where the senior management or the execs of companies could be having a rough time. So who are they going to speak to? So if you've got that snobbery, they maybe don't want to speak to someone who's working on the line or working in the assembly line. So I think that to promote good mental health within the workplace and make it a mentally healthy place and a mentally healthy workplace, is you need a different demographic of people. You need senior managers. I would recommend senior managers go for it. I recommend HR professionals go for it. I recommend the managers and supervisors go for it, and also the people on what I would call the shop floor. I come from an industrial environment, so I would call that. I think that you need to involve everyone, so that takes away any snobbery and everything that goes along with that. But also, it's going to reduce the stigma, because if you know that you can speak to someone who isn't going to judge you, and they're going to listen to you non-judgmentally, not give you any glib advice, that's really important. And I think that's key. That's key. And then the other point I would like to make is, if a senior exec or a CEO or someone else is going to go through and be a mental health first aider, that's showing you that the mental health in the workplace is getting driven from the very top.
We've had a really good example of that, Eddie, and I know we've not spoken about this, but you've maybe seen it in some of my tweets and blogs, but there's a chap called Paul Feeney, who is the chief executive, one of the largest, we call it platform provider and asset manager within the sector, called Quilter. And irrespective of what you think about Quilter as a provider and advisor and platform and all those kind of things, he's led from the top in terms of opening up about his past. He lived in an abusive household growing up. going back a couple of generations, and he's done amazing work there in establishing a programme of events and support within Quilter. So that's a really good example of leading from the top. God, we've got loads of questions to get through. A pretty serious one here. So an anonymous question, and from someone who I know very well and care deeply about. My brother is in a deep depression and has been for a few years now, but he completely changes the subject when we try to talk to him about it. Won't entertain any conversation at all about it, but we as a family want to help. What can we do, and what steps can we take?
Okay, what a great question. I think what we've got to do is, the most important thing is to be patient. Be patient, because although you want to get the results that you want, is different from the person that's suffering from deep depression. So part of that condition is to become socially withdrawn. There'll be feelings of sadness, anxiety, guilt, even helplessness. So language is very important. You know, the way that you speak to them, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that the person who has wrote in this question, but I'm just going to do as a general point. You don't say things like it's in your head. Be a man. You know, you don't give glib advice. You know, going for a pint. That's not going to sort it. You know, you don't jolly along. You don't come on and cheer up, Eddie. Come on, what's wrong with you today? You can't do that. So what you want to do is less stress. And what I mean by that is you don't want to exaggerate it because of the results that you want. What you have to be is you've got to be sensitive. And because you're not going to engage in a conversation, try not talking. Just be there, sitting in a room, not saying a word. Be there for them. Most importantly, listen to them. Encourage medical opinion. Be there for them. I know it's going to take a long time for this, and I know we're kind of crossed for time, but offer to be supportive. You know, exercise is great again, and I know that someone who has deep depression, their goal could be just to get up in the morning. So once they've got up in the morning, great, that's goal number one. Goal number two could be get up and have some breakfast. Okay, so they get up and have some breakfast. They can go back to bed, but that's two goals that I've accomplished in 2 days. You know, the third goal could be get up, have breakfast, have a shower, go back to bed. Whatever it could be, but those are wee small goals that are going to get achieved, and then that could lead to exercise, getting outside, be there for them, go for a walk. Just these things. I spoke about the road to recovery as well. It's going to be, it's definitely going to be bumpy along the way. But I think what's my best advice I can give is learn about the condition together if you can. If not, learn about it yourself. And most importantly, we touched about it at the very beginning, professional medical help is a must. Now, there's 2 YouTube videos that I use for my courses, and these are really, really good. They're excellent for depression. One is I Had a Black Dog, and that's all about living with depression, how they've got this black dog. The black dog is what Winston Churchill used to call his depression. So it's an animation based around that. The second one is called Living with a Black Dog, and that's on YouTube as well. And that's excellent. That's for people who are carers, who are partners, you know, family members, friends of people who have depression, and it gives them a greater understanding of what the condition is, but most importantly, how they can act to help. And I think that's really important.
Thanks very much for that, Eddie. That's an amazing answer. A question that links to this one is, what's the best example that you've seen of a mental health intervention that you can think of?
The best intervention for anyone that's going to be a mental health first aider, their role is to preserve life. So I think it's really important that you're able to listen. Also, that you don't try and fix a problem yourself. Recognise the signs of a mental health problem or distress. You're being able to provide initial help, guide a person towards appropriate professional help as well. Having the confidence of how to ask about suicide. And what I mean by that is, it's very difficult. Some people don't even like the word suicide. So how can you actually speak to someone about suicide and then ask them if that's what their thoughts they're having? And the intervention, I've done interventions on suicide, and one of them, I was able to go to the hospital with them, sat with them for 4 hours in the hospital, and they got the professional help they needed. And for me, that's, I wouldn't say it's the best intervention I've had, because it could be anything from someone who just needs an ear, someone who can just talk to, whether it be someone who's going through some bereavement, or someone who is having their own problems, and they're just needing someone to talk to, someone to listen to. So there's a big wide range of different complex issues that you have. But most importantly, I think the most important one is, one, to be able to listen, and two, to have the confidence in being able to ask about suicide. That's what I would say.
Grand. And one question that's come in on the app. This is a really great question from, God, my glasses are all steamed up, from Dilara. How do we go about normalising things like a mental health day off that's treated just like a sick day? There still seems to be an unfair stigma attached to it in the workplaces, unfortunately, and I think that's a very fair comment. How do you go about normalising that within a workforce?
Education. We touched on return to works and stuff like that as well. I think that if your organisation or your company, if they do have an understanding, and whoever it is you report to for that day off, as long as they've got that understanding, that's really important as well, because you could actually help them, engage with them. If someone's phoning up and they're saying, I need this day off because I'm having trouble with X, Y, or Z, and it's through a mental health issue, they maybe not want to speak to you directly over the phone about it, but at least you can be able to say, going back to the old mantra, are you okay? Is there anything we can do to help? I think that's important.
Nice one. So I think that's, oh no, we've got one more question actually from Neil. Hi Neil, thanks for asking that. How do you prevent conflicts of interest by having a senior manager also as the first aider stroke influencer, when in small businesses you often wear multiple hats? That's a great question as well.
It all depends. It'd be quite hard to have a conflict of interest, because if you are a small business, or if you're a global company, you want to care for your employees. You have a duty of care for the employees. And I know what you're saying, the pressures of wearing all these different hats, they all have conflict. But if you want to have a mentally healthy workplace, and you want to have a duty of care for your employees in a mental health situation, or to make it mentally healthy, you've got to adapt, and you've got to have that education. You've got to have the knowledge and understanding about how these people are feeling, and once you do that, you will actually improve your workplace. You'll improve your company, and all for the better.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice there, Eddie, and we're getting loads of nice comments coming through. Just on a very, very serious note, we've got one last question, which was actually posed by Mike Barrett from the Lancat. Mike Barrett is consulting director at the Lancat, and he's asked me to ask you, Eddie, can you boogie?
Can I? Sorry, what?
Can you boogie?
All right. Oh yes, sir. I can boogie.
Aye. Poor Mike. Mike, there's lots of people watching right now who are probably absolutely baffled as to what's going on. But yes, sir, I Can Boogie has been adopted as the new Scottish national anthem. And poor Mike has had this song stuck in his head for 7 days since, and we're increasingly creative ways to keep it in his head. So thanks for indulging us in that little bit of ridiculousness. Listen, we've absolutely bust our 45 minutes or so, Eddie. A huge thank you for giving up your time to donate to the Lancat and to the financial services sector. I'm sure people have found it absolutely invaluable. You're an absolute legend. You said something when we spoke last week doing the prep for this, and you're far too modest to say this on air, but you said something amazing when we were speaking, and you said there's a cliche with mental health that if you just help one person, then that's good enough. You know, if I can just help one person and change their life, that's good. But you said to me that you want to help everybody, which I thought was an absolutely amazing approach, because I think even by virtue of having this conversation, people might change their attitude by 1%. They might have a productive discussion with a colleague or a friend or a loved one, or they might check in with someone, and that creates this incredible ripple effect throughout financial services and throughout the wider society. So I'm dead proud to be able to have a job where I can invite people like yourself on and have these kind of discussions. So more power to you, Eddie, and all the best for the future. All the best to Dunfermline Athletic. Of course, we are now 8 games unbeaten, 7 wins out of 8. Scotland have qualified for next year's Euros. I think we've maybe prematurely written off 2020 as being a bad year. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but final word to you, Eddie. What's the last word?
The last word is, and this will maybe resonate with a lot of the people from Lancat. Today, Dunfermline Athletic launched their festive period. Mental health awareness, and what we're doing is we've managed to team up with the local branch of the Dunfermline Samaritans, probably because they've been able to go and meet with the people from the Samaritans by going on your walk and stuff like that. But what we're doing is we're recognising that situations just now aren't normal, and people's Christmases and festive time and festive period is going to be different for ones that they're not used to. You know, it's going to be completely different. So what we're doing is we're raising mental health awareness. If anybody is going to tune in to the Dunfermline and Hearts game on Friday on BBC One Scotland, you'll notice the Dunfermline players in the warm-up, they'll be wearing the distinctive green Samaritan t-shirts, and what we're hoping to do with that is promote the work and the support and listening service that the Samaritans do. Also and bring that into the local community as well. So we're trying to think outside the box and trying to do things differently, because it'd be great to have the Samaritans down for a day and do a bucket collection in the stadium and stuff like that. We can't do that anymore. So we realise that there is a need for this promotion. So it's going to get promoted through the Dunfermline Athletic and the Samaritans social media channels. Everything like that. So today's the launch for that. So it goes on the website today. Tomorrow we're getting local press coverage and other social media channels like the NHS Fife and Fife Health and Social Care Partnership, and possibly Fife Council as well are going to share this message that needs to go out and let people know that they are not on their own and every life matters. I know it's a wee bit political. People can interpret different ways, but every life matters in Fife. So that's probably the best way to put it.
Nice one. Listen, thanks very much, mate. You're an absolute star. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Join us next week where Mr. Paulson will be back in the hot seat. Thanks for tuning in. See you later. Bye-bye.